We're joined now by Segun Sowunmi, who is the spokesman for the Atiku Abubakar presidential campaign, and Arise analyst Abiodun Adeniyi. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us tonight on News Night. Let me begin with you, Segun Sowunmi. I mean, you're the spokesman for the Atiku campaign organization. Has the PDP missed an opportunity to put her best foot forward by rejecting, according to Samuel Otom, the person of Wike, who has been a pillar of the party? And besides that, 14 out of 17 people in a committee set up by your principal, Atiku Abubakar, actually, picked Wike as vice presidential candidate, but yet he was jettisoned for another a different person, in the person of Okowa, the governor of Delta State. What do you make of this position coming from the Benue State governor?
Well, thank you very much. I think the first thing that I would like to say is that people run with only the part of the information they have. The business of picking a vice presidential candidate for a joint ticket for a party like PDP, for a candidate as experienced as Atiku Abubakar, could not have been limited to just those 17 people. The likelihood is that so many other considerations, so many other publics were reached out to. Among them, you will be imagining former leaders of the country, among them some other critical stakeholders, among them some other governors, among them probably this. And we are very lucky. We're not like APC that can't even find a vice presidential candidate. We have 3 potential presidents to consider. We had His Excellency Wike of River State. We had His Excellency Udom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom. And we had His Excellency Okowa of Delta. Fact is, any man who has to choose of this will first of all be happy with his party and feel lucky. But many things are considered. One of them is that possibly you're going to be looking for what is tangentially close enough to the southeastern bloc. And when you have a name like Ifeanyi, it begins to tilt it. You're going to look at how has the contest been up till that point. Remember that two cannot work together unless they agree. You're going to look at how those other sections of the society interpret the role. You are going to look at how exactly do you want the government to look like. And then you're going to look at what are the other possibilities that exist. I doubt if the position of the vice president, as highly placed as it may be, is the most important or probably the only position available in government. And some skill sets are best suited for certain responsibility. If you're looking for a diplomat, someone who will be like a diplomat, you want to look for someone with a bit of calm nerves and dictions and certain other quality. If you are looking for a mobilizer, there are certain qualities you look for. If you are looking for someone who understands the economy and money, there are things you look for. But, all of this said, all I would just say is this. Every loyal party man understands that once a decision is taken, that forecloses that. And the business of reconciliation, rapprochement, managing the fray now will then commence. And in doing that, we will just have to plead with those who may feel slightly uncomfortable that, look, the greater responsibility before us now is to face the Nigerian people and go try to rescue the country like we all agree.
Let me bring in Professor Abiodun Adeniyi into the conversation. Professor Adeniyi, you've listened to Segun Sowunmi. I don't know if you think he's trying to downplay what Governor Samuel Otom said this morning on the Arise News channel. It looks like, from what he said, Atiku Abubakar made a tough and an unpopular decision. How do you think this will play out for him? How costly is it likely to be for him and the PDP? How serious is this crisis in your own opinion?
Well, first, I think Segun Sowunmi is right, to try to put things in context, as a spokesperson of the party, and he has done so eloquently. typically, But first, we must commend Governor Udom, for coming out, for having the courage to coming out and telling us what is being discussed in huge tones by pundits all over the place. These are things that have been making the rounds, and there are credible reasons to believe that the Rivers State Governor is still very aggrieved, But of course, this is something we also expect after a major primary like that of the PDP, that was keenly contested, that was vociferous, that was stringent in all aspects that we can consider, But after all, after all is said and done, what we need to do is to expect some level of high-level reconciliation, because Governor Wike is somebody who has been said to have played a lot of role in building the party up to where it is. When it appears as if the party was collapsing, he stood his ground, funded it all around, and with that status, with those achievements, with those investments, emotional and all, it's not that kind of person you expect to pull out very easily. Now we are having members of other parties, approaching him. I do not expect the PDP hierarchy to allow that to happen in the first instance. Immediately after the Delta State Governor was chosen, maybe efforts will have been made, even before the announcement of Governor Okowa, as against Wike, that appeared to be the favored candidate, by some stakeholders. Even before the announcement was made, there should have been an arrangement to see him, to mitigate potential pain that will come from his name, from the fact that he wasn't going to be the preferred, vice presidential candidate. But these are expected things that will happen in a situation where there's just a slot to be filled. At the end of the day, we expect parties that are losing out, to feel bad, to feel a sense of disappointment. They are human beings in the first instance. And of course, there are people that have made some substantial investment. These are things that we expect. But the greater grace really is for how the disagreement is managed, and the onus likely rests, with the presidential candidate of the PDP, to lead the team, that will manage this after effect of their primary. It's something that they have to manage. Otherwise, it might chip a lot away from their support in the build-up to the presidential election. And this is something that they need not take for granted, because Wike, like Governor Otom has acknowledged, is a force to be reckoned with, and of course, his potentials may not be undermined in the circumstance this well.
All right. Let me come back to you. Show me. Is it a case of the fact that Wike is seen to be too strong of a personality, and that might be a threat to an Atiku presidency? Is that really the underlying factor why, Wike was not picked as vice presidential candidate?
I think in trying to answer that, I'll just try to flip you to 2014 when the APC was coming on board. Imagine Dateline 2014. The now presidential candidate of their party had worked very hard to build that coalition, and suddenly a presidential candidate in the now president Muhammadu Buhari has emerged. It must have crossed Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's mind that why couldn't he be the vice presidential candidate since they were coming south. But there are many considerations that would have made it say, okay, it's not going to be you, Asiwaju. We're going to go all the way and go and look for a professor that is minding his business in his church, and we're going to make him the joint ticket. Did Asiwaju get so ballistic, so angry, and start to throw everything underneath the table or throw it behind the boss? I believe very strongly too that all of these experiences Governor Nyesom Wike has to endure now is to prepare him for a final man for the future. And that sometimes what seems like a misfortune may basically even be the fuel to keep you in the hearts of the people, depending on how you manage yourself. And I think that nobody removed him for malicious reasons. I just gave you one. I said, given that the Southeast was not going to be vice president, there was a great desire to bring something that is tangentially close to them. And you cannot deny that Ifeanyi Okowa is qualified and also tangentially close to the Southeasterners. That's one of them. The other thing you want to think about is you produce a vice presidential candidate that complements the president. We are not APC. We don't intend to win an election and not form government immediately or run the country and get serious immediately.
Exactly what do you mean? When you say
well, what I mean is that if you had a Barack Obama running a campaign against Hillary Clinton and then he won, he didn't exactly make her vice president. He made her Secretary of State. I believe that in the plan of Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate, and by God's grace, the next president of the country, there is a very big role for Governor Wike. Everybody who is a PDP man, everybody who is a PDP leader loves and recognizes his contribution. What we will want to say is that Governor Wike must not allow those who mill around and profit at his table to begin to be more vexed or be wiser than the Pope and be throwing invectives all over the place because we have a bigger assignment in front of us. And so that is to go win the election.
You're talking about pacifying him. Governor Otom said, you know, a visit will do. It will be a first place to start. You're saying opposition in government. But let me bring in Professor Adeniyi back into this conversation. Professor Adeniyi, if you listen to that conversation this morning with Governor Otom, he said 14 out of 17, although he did not name names. But this may be beyond just a Governor Wike. And I'm saying this because just hours ago, we also saw a tweet by former governor of Ekiti State, Governor Fayose. And if we have that tweet up, yes, that's it. It says the current president of Nigeria is a two-term northern presidency, thus implying that it must be a southern presidency in 2023 or nothing. It said, our South Locon, that's a popular phrase we've been seeing, originating from the presidential candidate of the APC. However, you see what this is. Do you think that this problem started beyond, you know, a vice presidential candidate? And I'm asking because we heard strong words such as betrayal used by Governor Wike after that primary. So is it really a Governor Wike or is it beyond a governor? Is it the crack within the PDP? How deep is this crack? Would you say when you see tweet by Governor Fayose, where you hear Governor Otom saying 14 out of 17?
Well, there are so many ways to unpack it at this one. But first is to make a comment on what Segun said earlier on. And I understand if Segun is not saying this, I don't expect him to say it as a party man anyway. It's the fact that, you know, in considering a vice president, you also look at character, look at temperament, you look at the disposition of the individual. Largely, Governor Wike is believed to be a trenchant speaking person, and somebody who can sometimes be divisive, he can be very blunt, you know, he can be very bold, he says his mind, and in the process of politicking in the last couple of months, you know, he's believed to have ruffled some feathers, you know, and stepped on some toes with his pronouncements. But in the case of Okowa, for instance, he's seen as a temperate person, moderate person, you know, who could fit into the diplomatic framework of who a vice president should be. So in the consideration, final consideration of the PDP flag bearer, he may have put this into context, you know. I think we shouldn't miss this point. It might be a difficult point to acknowledge, but I think it's a very strong point that we need to note. But to your question, really, nobody can really tell. The questions around North-South equation has been raging over the period, and in the build-up to the primary, do not forget, you know, the sing-song was around the need for us to have a president of Southeastern extraction, but we didn't get it along the line, and of course, it seems now that everybody is being whipped into line. You know, we are getting comfortable with the North-South arrangement, PDP, APC that is, and of course with Kwankwanso and Obi in the equation. You know, what is left now is how we do further balancing along the lines of the vice presidential tickets. PDP has concluded is in the main, others are still being awaited, you know, and of course these the debates, you know, around the potentials of a vice presidential candidate determining the direction of vote will also continue until final decisions are made. And my understanding of politics is that when a candidate or when a decision is finally made, you just find everybody coming into line, and of course reconciliation will eventually follow. One thing you can give to the typical Nigerian politician or to the average politician is that they are very good in politicking. You know, you may fault them, I've said this several times, at the level of governance, but at the level of politicking, you may not be able to beat them. Even the question of Wike that we are discussing now, at the end of the day, I see it being resolved, you know. I mean, it's just about engagement, consultation, you know, peace building, and of course, you find that PDP will get peace at the end of the day, preparing themselves to face the APC, because they cannot afford to be divided in the build-up to the election. You know, if we're going to have a robust, vibrant contest in 2023, as the case could be.
Segun Sowunmi, still staying on the issue of why, you know, the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, was not picked. It was not just one committee. As a matter of fact, 4 committees in the PDP recommended that Wike should be the running mate to Atiku Abubakar. In spite of all of that, he did not emerge. Why?
You see, I tried to explain to you that you don't have the total number of space that was consulted. If you're invited into one committee, you only know about your committee. You do not know how many other committees, how many other are listening to others in the country and other. Would you really expect that 17 people will take the decision for 200 and something million? There are stakeholders, there are principal publics, there are religious groupings. There's so many other things to consider. And then finally, there's a candidate who has to decide, this is the person I want to go with.
Yeah, that's the point. There were 4 other committees.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell you that you don't even know whether the numbers you are bringing 4 is the complete number.
Or if there are more.
You are looking at, I can tell you the ones you are thinking about. You are looking at the ones that are within the party. I'm telling you that so many other things go into this. And let me quickly say something about the Ayo Fayose one.
Yes.
When the election in Ekiti was lost a couple of weeks ago, I ran to him to cuddle him and try to encourage him. Not so much because I think he did the right thing in the build-up to that election, but it's also part of the bending backward over to make people understand that sometimes the things just don't go your way. Now, if you now come to public space now, you bought the form that election, you contested, you just didn't make it. It was democracy, nobody imposed anybody. Almost every part of Nigeria was represented in the ballot. Somebody has been adjudged the winner, you're a party man. When you start to use the phrases that are consistent with the opposition, you might as well just go. So we can just say, okay, it's a free joining association. People can go in and people can come out. We count our losses and we move on.
Are you saying you won't be concerned if a Wike left?
No, I'm not talking about Wike. I'm talking about Fayose now.
I'm even talking about the Wike, for example.
I think that, with profound respect, Wike is too valuable an asset that we don't want to lose. But I also say it with every sense of dignity and responsibility that certain decisions are absolutely reserved of individuals. And you know what? APC, that is the Buhari presidency, won the 2019 and the 2015 election in spite of me, Wike, and all of us that are not with them. Election can be won and lost. We must make sure that just because PDP has settled the issue of his vice presidential candidate, indicating the level of their preparedness, you can't make it the sticking point, because all the others have not even been able to bite the bullet and take the tough decision that we have taken. And I want to say to all our leaders, to Otom, to Wike, to everybody, the bigger issue before us now is not about our individual preferences and our desire. The bigger issue before us now is to say to ourselves, if all of the indicators in the country show that there is a need for an urgent rescue of the country, then the less of ourselves we put forward, the better for everybody. Decisions have favored us in the past. If they don't favor us now, maybe, just maybe, they'll favor us in the future. And for someone like Wike, I think staying in the PDP is his best bet, because I see a presidential candidate in him sometimes in the future. Because the PDP will certainly come out. And if it comes out, we'll be looking at men like Wike and a few others.
We definitely wish the PDP the best, but we must correct the information given earlier. Of the 4 committees set up to produce the VP or the running mate, only one of those 4 actually picked a governor Wike to be.
Thank you most profoundly.
So records set straight there. Thank you so much, Segun Sowunmi, spokesperson for the Atiku presidential campaign, for being on the news tonight, and Arise News analyst, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, for sharing your thoughts on this matter with us. Thank you both.